Elden Ring gets a board game. Does that mean that a tabletop RPG could be coming soon?
It's finally happening!
Welcome to the Character Sheet, comicbook.com's daily breakdown of tabletop RPG and fantasy news. Now, before we dive into today's news, which is all about the lands between, some Dragonlance reveals, and a Stormlight Archives tease, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video. Steamforged Games has announced a brand new Elden Ring board game, with a Kickstarter to follow sometime, hopefully later this year. Now, not much is known about this new Elden Ring game, other than it will feature the same mix of exploration and incredibly punishing combat that made the Elden Ring video game a smash hit. Now, since this is a Steamforged game, it will probably also include some highly detailed miniatures. Now, Steamforged publishes a number of tabletop games that are adaptations of various Bandai Namco games, including a line of Dark Souls games, which includes Dark Souls the board game, Dark Souls the card game, and Dark Souls the tabletop RPG. So looking at those previous adaptations, we have to wonder whether Steamforged is planning to publish an Elden Ring RPG sometime in the not-so-distant future. After all, Steamforged has been bolstering its RPG development studio recently, hiring Gabe James as a senior developer earlier this year. And while the Dark Souls game really struggled as a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adaptation, an Elden Ring game might be a bit more successful, especially as the lands between seems a little bit more conducive to the high fantasy style of gameplay that Dungeons & Dragons is known for. Now, you may remember something about an Elden Ring's tabletop RPG already being worked on, and that is true. The Japanese publisher Kadokawa is working on an Elden Ring tabletop RPG, which they plan to release in 2023. Now, while Kadokawa is an esteemed Japanese publisher, and they previously released a very interesting Dark Souls game that was made for one game master and one player, none of their tabletop RPGs have really gotten a release outside of Japan. Now, we even asked Steamforged earlier this year if they had ever considered publishing an English version of Kadokawa's Japanese Dark Souls game, but they noted that there was a rights issue. So it seems unlikely that we'll ever get that Elden Ring game, and we may need to wait for Steamforged or another RPG publisher to make their own Elden Ring tabletop RPG. Now, mind you, this is all just mindless speculation, but don't be surprised if we see an Elden Ring tabletop RPG coming out sooner as opposed to later.
Just hook it to my veins!
Now, speaking of mindless speculation, it sounds like we'll be getting some more news about a Stormlight Archives game of some kind later this week. Brotherwise Games co-founder Johnny O'Neill noted on Reddit that he would be on Brandon Sanderson's weekly livestream on September 20th to discuss the future of Stormlight Archives games and collectibles. Now, O'Neill said this in response to a question specifically about a Stormlight Archives tabletop RPG. So, it seems like we may have something to report on later this week. In the meantime, the Stormlight Archives miniature Kickstarter has raised over $2 million, which means that Brandon Sanderson has now been involved with 2 multi-million-dollar Kickstarter campaigns this year alone. That's just ridiculous. Good for him. Now, in more tangible tabletop RPG news, WizKids has revealed that the upcoming Dragonlance adventure will feature a red Dragonel. A preview image of the Dragonel, which WizKids is making a miniature of, shows a creature that looks, well, very much like a red dragon, albeit with a skinnier body and longer wings. For those who aren't familiar with Dragonels, they're basically less intelligent dragons that are often used as flying mounts. And while Dragonels have occasionally had red scales in past editions of Dungeons & Dragons, I believe that this is the first time that we've had an official red Dragonel variant. Now, WizKids also announced that they are making a Death Dragon premium miniature, complete with a little tiny Lord Soth miniature that serves as a rider. Both the red Dragonel and the Death Dragon will be released in April 2023. Would you play an Elden Ring tabletop RPG? Let us know in the comments section.